Here are some of the real difference makers, in my opinion, for excellent return on investment with your open houses. Number one, you need to be with people that walk through the door. You need to be personable, authentic, knowledgeable, and bring value. You don't need to be that salesy person. You want to be that person that when people walk through the door, they start to like you right away. When people walk through open houses, do you think they're really excited typically about talking to a realtor? No, they're not. And most people who walk through an open house, how many other open houses have they walked in? So here's one thing I like to say when people walk in, besides just a nice friendly hello, and you kind of show them a couple things. Hey, here's some information. Hey, look around the house a little bit. I like to just let them come in, nice big smile, say, hey, here's a little information about the house. Why don't you walk around and I'll be right here when you come back to answer any of your questions. So right away, they're kind of relieved that they don't have to talk to me. Hey, and when you come back around, I want to ask you a few questions and get your feedback. Okay, great. And you just let them go on their way. But then when they come back, we're going to start asking questions. Resist the temptation to pick up your open house flyer and start reading all the pertinent information to them. Built in 1978, 2,419 square feet. It's a 3.5, la, 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 la. That's so boring. Just start asking questions. Hey guys, what did you think? What's your favorite part of the house? What'd you think about the pink bedroom? Do you like the yard? What are you guys looking for? Where do you live? Do you live in the neighborhood? Are you currently looking to buy? What have you seen so far? And here's where I like to throw in this question. I'm looking for the right opportunity to throw this in. And I'll say, you guys have been to other open houses, haven't you? And they'll kind of just smile. It's like, how many open houses have you been to? And then they'll like kind of laugh. They'll look at each other a lot. And then here's the question I like to ask. Have you met any creepy realtors? And then they just laugh and they relax. And I'm like, I get it. I'm not one of them. I don't bite. I'm here to help. Hey, let me show you a couple things I have here that may be of interest to you, right? So see, it's all the asking questions. I'm trying to disarm them a little bit. If there's some cookies and drinks, I am a fan of that. And I'm a fan of having some snacks and some beverages because one, I think it helps people relax and they'll stick around a little longer. Anything I can get just to have a few more minutes with the person who walks through the door and to get them to chill a little bit is advantageous. So we're engaging. When I say bring value is having some information that's different from any other open house they've been at. So tip number 2 is have a list of off-market properties. So I could even say, hey, I know you guys have been to a lot of open houses, but I have a feeling that you haven't seen, or tell me if you've seen something like this. This is a list of off-market properties in the area. Now, what is on that list? Now, this takes a little time, but it's so worth it. So off-market for the area could be new construction. It could be coming soon. If you know of anything coming soon, it could also be expireds and withdrawals. It could be a for sale by owner in the neighborhood. That takes some time to have an off the market list. Now, here's what I always do with these lists. Now, this is just my preference. I only have one copy of everything, of all the information that I have for people. I will text it to them, or I will email it to them, or I will have a QR code that they can scan to get the information. I'm going to show you that here in a minute. But this off-market list, it's like, wait a minute, that is totally going to stand out any other open house that they have been in. Okay.
I never thought of that.
I just heard it at a conference I was at, I think last fall, and I thought it was brilliant. Here's tip number 3. They said they started doing this with their team. They doubled their results. And what it was is, let's say your open house is from 1 to 4. Tell the sellers that the open house is from 1 to 4, but that you do all of your follow-up calls before you leave the house, specifically telling the sellers, don't come home until 4:30. So you set them up for that. Now, what I would do is, so if the open house is done at 4, now if there's still people standing, pulling up to the curb at 4, guess what? You're going to have a longer open house, right? Nobody shuts down if that's the case, right? That would be the exception. You keep going. It's like if somebody pulls up and your sign says 1 to 4 and literally it's like 4 o'clock and they kind of are pulling up, you can see out the kitchen window. You need to open that front door as fast as can be. And you need to be doing this. You're like, come on in. And they're like, Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? It's like, come on in, right? Get the people into the house. But here's the other tip. So once you shut down the open house, so let's say no one else is walking in or pulling their car up. It's 4 o'clock. Take the couple signs, and yes, you heard me right. Take the couple signs that are in your front yard and pop them in your trunk, and then go back into the house. Now, you're not going to go pick up all of your signs. You're just picking up the couple that are in the front yard, drop them in your trunk, close the trunk, go back in the house. Before you leave the house, you're going to send a personalized video text message to every single person who came to that open house, including any realtors that came in. A realtor with a client, a realtor who stopped in by themselves, a buyer who stopped in by themselves. Even if they said they're working with another realtor, by the way, when a buyer tells you they're working with the realtor, I don't believe them. Sometimes they do that because it's kind of like telling the retail clerk, no, I don't need any help. It's like, well, I might need help in a few minutes, but right now I don't need any help. So if they say they're working with the realtor, that doesn't mean they're committed to them. That doesn't mean they've signed anything. It doesn't mean that they like them. By the end of your visit with them, they may realize that they like you better than any agent they have met so far. And that's kind of the goal. Because there'll be a couple that walks out of your open house and they'll say to themselves, oh, I really liked her. And they'll say, yeah, I really liked her. So if you're sending, and this is before you leave the house, because you won't do it. This is the best way to get it done. Remember, you've already worked that afternoon from 1 to 4. Actually, you probably left your house at like 12:15. You did all your signs and you put time into the open house. So hopefully you spent at least an hour preparing for that open house, at least, because you have to know that house. You have to know that neighborhood. You want to know statistics for that neighborhood, like you're writing a PhD dissertation. You know it better than anybody, right? So you've already put in the time. You're going to put in just about 20 more minutes before you get to jump in the car and head on home. Drop your perfection. This is not a perfection exercise. The more authentic, the better. It's the same as leaving a voice message. You don't practice your voice message 3 times before you hit send. You're sending them a personalized message. This was a big team in Florida that they started doing this with their team. They made it a requirement of their team open houses. And they said they started doubling their results of getting follow-up appointments with people who came through. Number 4 thing I want to cover, how to get people to the open house. Here's a technique with the neighbors. What if really the public open house is 1 to 4, but what if you do neighbors only from 12 to 1, public from 1 to 4? Now that's a longer open house, or you could do neighbors only 1 to 2, public open house from 2 to 4. I'm a fan of the 3-hour open house. I think 2's just, look, you've already committed to that afternoon anyways. You may as well kind of go all in. So I'm a bigger fan of the 3-hour. Here's another thing I like to do is whenever I was doing an open house, I always called and texted a handful of my friends that loved to go to open houses. So I want you to think of your friends who are HGTV junkies, open house junkies, or they tend to go out to brunch on Sundays and they're out and about. Ask them to come to your open house. If you could get a friend or two just to pop into your open house to say hello, for me, that was always equivalent to a friend walking into my office. If you can get 1 or 2 of those per open house, so any open house that you're doing, think of your friends that are just kind of wired that way, that they love to look at houses. Or think of a friend who lives in the area. Call them up, text them. They will come by. Those are great opportunities for you to build that relationship. And while they're there, you're just going to talk shop. How often do you have an opportunity just to talk real estate shop with your friends? Not all that often. Joanna says, neighbors know a lot about the neighborhood and are a good source of information. They're a great source of information. If there is a neighbor who's just being nice and friendly, and they are all, trust your gut. Some folks don't really want to talk to you. So it's literally maybe about a 10-second conversation, but that's fine. But the ones that are really nice, ask them about the neighborhood. How long have you been here? What do you like best about the neighborhood? What's your favorite restaurant in the area? So getting people to your open house, I think having signs out early. Now you may have to have a little, custom sign made that says open house Friday, Saturday 1 to 4, open house Sunday 1 to 4. With your open house signs, you need to get your own open house signs. Now, can you use generic ones that someone gave you? Yes. Can you use those generic ones like at the Board of Realtors? Be careful. Now in Texas, any signage you use. So if you buy a little open house sign at Home Depot or at the Board of Realtors, it's actually in Texas, that's not compliant because you're advertising your business without having your broker logo on it. People are going to think that you're this crazy busy realtor in that neighborhood because they're seeing your name, they're seeing your signs. So signage matters. And I think it should have your name on it. Otherwise, you're just advertising either your brokerage, or if you're using someone else's signs, you're helping them gain exposure. I want you to gain exposure. I want you to gain recognition. I want people to think, man, I'm seeing your signs all the time. You must be so busy. Like, well, guess what? You're holding someone else's listings open, but it makes you look like you're the realtor. Because I saw the open house signs you posted on Workplace and ordered similar ones. I love my open house signs because they're round. I think they look cool. It's a nice, simple design, and they stand out. Joanne says, how many people have their pictures on their signs? Now, this gets into another conversation. I don't do my picture on signs, but I know a lot of people who do. I mentioned to you earlier using QR codes. This is an example of a flyer that I use at an open house. Now, I'd like to tell people, like if I have some data for the neighborhood on the table, which I always do, right? You want to have good data so you can show people that. And folks will say, ooh, can I have a copy of that? Or can I have that? Be careful because people will take your stuff. But I always say, it's like, oh no, I'm always green with all of my open houses. So everything's available electronically. I want people to scan for the information. So I provide just this one sheet on the table. I'm like, hey, if you scan this URL, it's going to give you all the detail and all the photos of this property. And if you scan this URL, we can set up a private consultation, you and I, a private conversation. So like this first QR code, I'm going to show you where I got that. This second one, I use Calendly. This is actually a link to my Calendly. People like this because you don't see that at every open house. It's like, oh, that's a really good idea. It's like, yeah, hold your phone over it. And sometimes if people don't know how to handle QR codes, you're just going to show them. Now, this may be different depending on your CRM. Mine is KV Core. Yours may be something else, but I'm going to show you this example in KV Core because this is what I do. So if I go into KV Core and I go to listings, now in this case, I'm going to go to my listings, but let's say if I was holding Chris's listing open, I could go to company listings and find his listing, okay, for the open house that I'm doing. In this case, I'm going to pull up my most recent listing and I open it up. Now, I don't know if you knew that you could do this. This is one that's actually closing on Friday. Yay. For this property or any other property that I pull up. Now, if it's not my listing, of course, I need the permission from the other agent. We're assuming that. Look at this button that says more action. I click this and I go right here to generate QR code. Boom. There's my QR code for my flyer. And all I do is I do a little screen capture and I post it in my flyer. Here's why this is such an important component to, I think, you getting a good return on your open houses. Anything you send them, any advertising you do for that open house, any link that you text to somebody, any QR code you have someone scanning needs to be into a program that is capturing their information. If you're just using a link to the MLS listing, that's not capturing it. You have to get their information. So are you doing a good old-fashioned sign-in sheet when people walk through the door? That's fine too, because you're getting their information. But both of these QR codes that I had shown you are going to land right into my CRM. You need to capture people's content. So again, in KV Core, it's you open the listing and it's in more actions, generate QR code. So I think that is a really, really important tool. So keep that in mind with anything that you have at your open house. If somebody clicks on it, or if they have that link, is it going to you or is it going to some page that's not capturing their information? So really pay attention to that. This has happened to me. The seller might send a spy into the open house, a family member, a neighbor. So assume that anyone who walks through that door could be the best friend of the seller. So what does that mean? You can never say anything disparaging about the house with anyone who walks through the door. I would not make a side comment that you think the house is overpriced. That would be a bad idea. Don't complain about the neighborhood, nothing. Assume that the person who walks through the door is a good friend of the sellers and they're going to report back. So you better look good. You better know the house, know the neighborhood, be really helpful. Keep that in mind. On time, we covered that. Show up early and never, ever leave early. Never cancel on another realtor unless you're dying. Rain. If the weather is cruddy, is there a washable rug at the entrance? You may just need to bring one from home. Know the seller's preference, because sometimes homes will have kind of a shoe off policy, a no shoe policy, right? But be cognizant of that. Do you ever cancel an open house because of weather? Probably. I mean, in Chicago, probably a blizzard, maybe. Oh, okay, Joanna, good tip. A mallet to get the signs in the ground. In Austin, Texas, in July and August and September, it could be really hard to pound a sign in the ground. What could be helpful is if you have a couple gallon buckets of water and you may have to soak the ground for a minute, then you could go open the front door. And then when you come back, the ground is a little softer and you can actually get the sign in the ground. But that could be tricky when you're trying to get signs in the ground on the corner at the corner store because it's the arrow pointing to the open house and you can't even get it. You can't even get the sign in the ground. I mean, that happens, but you got to have your mallet. Be careful when you're putting your signs out and picking them up. Here's a really nice thing that you can do when you're putting signs out. If you're putting one on the corner to direct into the street, what if you walked up to that house front door and knocked and introduced yourself before you did that and said, you know what? I don't want to assume that you're okay with this. I'm sure because you live on the corner that this has happened to you quite a few times over the years. I just wanted to be a little more respectful of that and ask you, can I put this sign in the corner for the next 3 hours and then I'll pick it up? What if you did that? Nobody ever does that. That person's going to be like, oh my God, you're the first realtor who has ever asked me that over the years. Tell them you're aerating their lawn for them. Every once in a while, you'll run into a really grumpy person who tells you to go away. And then I would not put my sign in their corner lot. But it helps you stand out. It helps you look different and be different. Invite your realtor friends to come by that open house. People like open houses where there are people coming and going. It looks like a popular thing. It's like, well, wait a minute. Everyone else wants to see this house. I want to see this house. All of these things add up to a successful open house for you. But here's the key, possibly the most important key to the success of your open house for you to get a decent ROI on it, return on investment. It's all about your follow-up. It's follow up. That's why those 20 minutes at the end of your open house where you do those individualized video messages. Thanks for coming to the open house. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. I loved meeting you today. Follow up the next day. So you did that video. Maybe you follow up that evening with the link. Hey, here's the link. Or maybe it's the video and then the link. It's the next day. It's follow up again. Hey, just wanted to circle back around and see if you had any questions. What if you're doing that open house again the next weekend? Message all of those people again and say, hey, I'm holding that house open again. Why don't you come on by? Would love to see you. Because people will come by a second time. Here's the rule in real estate. Most people don't respond to you on the first or the second follow-up. It's the third, it's the fourth, it's the fifth, it's the sixth. You want to develop the art of being amazing with follow-up without being annoying. If you can master that, you will do really well in real estate. Okay, so what did we cover today? We covered what your job was. Make the listing agent look good, get the sellers some exposure, know the house in the neighborhood, and look like the hardest working realtor ever. Do your homework on that house. Number one, being personable, authentic, knowledgeable, and bringing value. Number two, off-market properties list. Number three, video messages before you leave the property. Number four, how to get people there. It takes some effort. Number five, all of your links need to lead back to you, not someplace else.